Hi, I am Vitold and let me tell you about what's great and about what's not so impressive in Ducati Multistrada V2 in the S variant that I've tested. I will first present to you all the pros of this bike and then move to some cons. Please do not pay attention to the number of each, but rather to the importance of them to you personally. We are all very different, so your feelings about the particular point may differ. So remember to always test ride a motorcycle that interests you at the end of the day. So let's go then with the first pro of the Ducati Multistrada V2, which to me is that it looks so much like a bigger and more expensive Multistrada V4, which is great for the V2. Obviously not so great for the V4. These motorcycles even use the same mirrors and rims. Then in the second spot there is cornering, which is a strong side of this Multistrada V2, as it quickly changes directions. It is well balanced and stays under control really at all speeds. It really is good when it comes to handling overall, and I really enjoy that particular thing in it. It's above average in the segment and in my opinion significantly better actually than the Multistrada V4. The third advantage is that it doesn't lack pretty much anything in terms of equipment, or at least optional equipment. You can even have a keyless ignition on it. That's very rare in this segment. It's really good with all the options like electronically adjustable front and rear suspension, like cornering ABS, traction control, some riding modes, LED lights, height adjustable windscreen, and other more regular stuff like heated grips, for example. But that keyless ignition and electronically adjustable suspension are something, and definitely not a segment standard. In the fourth place, we've got one of the not so many V2 engines in Ducati's lineup. I am a great fan of V2, so this is a pro here for the Multistrada V2 in my eyes. It's just about the fact that if you want to have an adventure Ducati with a V-twin, this is now your basically only option, at least in the Multistrada family. And so we reached the fifth point, that's now fully electronically adjustable suspension that I've mentioned, and wow, man, this thing really makes a difference. Going all the way from hard to soft and vice versa makes a very noticeable difference, to the point that you can actually quite successfully limit, for example, the front end dive when braking, just by stiffening the front suspension. Then you can leave the rear independent from that, which is also great. You can have it soft and nice and comfy. Now, the sixth pro of this bike, I've got to praise the V2 engine for its willingness to push the bike at higher RPM. Now this thing goes. There's as much power as in some larger adventure motorcycles, but it's still positioned as a mid-size adventure bike. So, you know, it's pretty capable if you push it. And you'll be able to have a lot of fun thanks to that performance. It actually is one of the most, I think, fun motorcycles to ride in the segment, performance-wise. I do like it, definitely. Number 7, engine sound. And this is because it's a V2, so it sounds beautifully, just as it should and just as a Ducati should. And then of course it's a new motorcycle, it's a modern motorcycle, which means that with the stock exhaust the engine doesn't sound as nicely as it would otherwise, but those exhaust farts are similar to how most of them sound, but there is a potential there. The note is still there despite the bike being rather quiet, because they all have to be quiet now. And also a huge advantage to me is that it's the only one in the segment to still have a V2, which puts it ahead in terms of sound here, along with Ducati Desert X with the same engine. A little bit of a different bike and tune there. And as the 8th pro comes design. This is a pretty bike to me personally, with really nice proportions. It's being slim, it's being light and fairly elegant. There's not much controversy or heaviness to it. Well, you know it's a Multistrada, you just don't know which one basically. It's a plus from me here. 9th thing here to mention is, for me, that brilliant windscreen adjustment system, which is super easy, it's quick, and it just works. I believe it's great, and combined with some aftermarket taller windscreen, it will be an even more fantastic experience. Now there's a little bit of wind noise of the stock windscreen, but they're pretty much always bad and too short when they come stock. 10th Pro will be a surprise, as I consider its price to be a strong point. Not because it's cheap, as it's not, But because if you want to have an adventure motorcycle from Ducati, this bike will cost you the least simply. You're getting a bike that looks like a Multistrada V4. It does a lot of stuff better actually. In some areas it can be improved by ourselves. So isn't it a good deal? It may be. So I really want to keep it in the pros. Now this way we arrive at the last 11th pro, which to me is that this motorcycle really does everything well and you can use it for pretty much any purpose. So to travel around, to travel very far, or to ride in the city and just have fun while getting a little bit crazy. It is a very, very good all-rounder overall, which is not always the case. So it deserves to be mentioned separately, I believe. So here we are with the pros. And now moving to cons and what may not be that great for you guys in this bike. Now let's start off with that engine so that you feel the blast quickly and then cool down. So below 4,000 RPM, it's really shit, as it just basically sleeps and then it shakes if you open the throttle, and it struggles to the point of shaking the display as if it was thrown out of a warm bed naked in minus 10 Celsius degrees and splashed with cold water. Below that number, it's not flexible, so you will need to change gears quite often. There's also a bit of delayed reaction to throttle, likely because of its ride-by-wire system, but it's not that big of a deal here. The second con may be that it's pretty large, this bike, or rather it feels that way because it's fairly tall and with a very, very wide handlebar. I mean, unusually wide. For shorter people or ones with shorter arms, it may turn out to be a bit of a struggle there. If you want to know more, check my full review of this Multistrada V2S in the video that's linked in the description. There I also go all in with the full force about it. The third thing that I don't like about this bike is that everything feels hard, especially when it comes to touching. Well, that's what I mean in this case. The seat is hard, it's not height adjustable, by the way. Grips are also thin and hard, so everything you touch when riding feels like it's not really designed for your comfort, and it would need to be replaced with some better ones, more comfy software. Well, I would certainly love to place my electric office chair on it and this way make it a super comfortable thing, along with a soft suspension setting that's already available there. Now check these electric beauties at powerseats.eu. These guys are amazing. Now in the fourth place, I need to mention a weak rear brake that's basically useless, as ABS is calibrated in a way that it panics immediately. It sometimes is the case, and in this Multistrada V2 it certainly does apply. Fifth thing that's not very good on its own is the windscreen itself, not the system, but the windscreen itself. I kind of mentioned that, which is it's causing the stream of wind to be loud around my helmet, and hence I would recommend to get rid of it and buy yourselves an aftermarket and taller one. The sixth thing I should mention, which may be sort of irrelevant or maybe even unfair to some point, but the thing is that the technology that Ducati has and put into the V4 is not here in the V2. So for example, the rear radar with blind spot monitoring, it can be in the V4, but it cannot be here. So I know this is setting the bar very high. Same goes for the front radar, same for some electronics and some other options. I get it that then it would likely cannibalize the V4, but still, you gotta know that if you want it all, you cannot have it all on the V2. I understand it, still not the biggest fan of it. In the seventh spot, there is this confusing strategy with offering a variant of a Multistrada V2 without the S letter for significantly less money, but with an unacceptable in the segment level of equipment. I'll just mention two things and you'll see for yourselves. The non-S doesn't even have cruise control, and Ducati established a new factory just to produce different switches that do not have the backlight in that non-S variant. Well, I'm kidding with that factory. Well, actually, who knows? But why bother with all that? Well, this variant only exists so that the starting price can look more attractive, and then you're screwed anyway because you gotta go for the S. Especially that in the next there is that price again. Yes, I told you before that the price is an advantage, and it is within the brand an advantage, but it's not so awesome when you take a look at the bikes in the segment outside of Ducati. I will still say that because of additional features, it may, and I think it could very much be actually worth it all, but for that value you've got to pay. Now the last disadvantage of this Ducati Multistrada V2 is that complicated onboard computer with an outdated display. It's also totally not intuitive to me, and on top of that, at some points you need to stop the bike to operate some functions. Now, hell, of course it's justified because of how much you've got to dig into the menu. So, do you know that there are three separate different places where you can adjust suspension? That's crazy. This should be the era of simplicity, not this that we're getting. Anyway, now you know my take on the pros and cons of Ducati Multistrada V2, and to see the full review of it and learn about all my experiences on it, head to the video in the link in the description. Subscribe for more pros and cons of the next mid-size adventure motorcycles, and see you there.